Hi, it's Madeline, and this is my discussion board for Module 10. For the book that I chose Grand Canyon by Jason Chen. And I chose this book because I've actually been to the Grand Canyon with my family many summers ago. We took a big road trip all the way across pretty much America, the country, and drove to the Grand Canyon all the way from North Carolina to Arizona. And just to see the landscape changes and the different animals, even the different like dirt colors, and in Arizona and in the Grand Canyon were really cool. So I thought I would connect that way with this book. So the type of book that I chose is nonfiction, and I knew that when I started to read it. It's kind of like an informational nonfiction, but it also tells a story along the way. It teaches facts about the Grand Canyon. It's about its history, its plants, animals, geology, all that good stuff. But it also follows along a little girl and her dad as they actually hike through it. And you can kind of tell because there's a few diagrams and labels on the pictures and pages and kind of side notes with extra science facts that you might want to know. But it kind of still feels like you're going on this journey with these characters as you're learning about the Grand Canyon. And it was very relatable because I also hiked down in the Grand Canyon with my parents and my dad. So it was just kind of cool to read about those things that I remember seeing all those summers ago. So the general text structure of this book and how the author Jason used it was kind of a chronological structure. It kind of moved from like the bottom of the Grand Canyon and the features down there and the different layers of rock and animals, all the way kind of what you would see at the top of the Grand Canyon and different animals that might not live in the bottom of the canyon, but just kind of hang out up top. And it was kind of as they hiked along, you could see those changes. And also, it was kind of a cause and effect structure while explaining how the canyon formed and how the land changed over time and what caused the canyon to be formed, like with the rivers and how powerful water is and those rivers that created the canyon. And I really connected with this because I just remember seeing that river down at the bottom of the canyon and the landscape and the elevation changes, and how the book just describes the plants and rocks and things that are so different from here in North Carolina. So there was a lot of good text structure things that the book had that kind of supported that comprehension for young readers. Lots of labels and captions of those rock layers and different plants. Diagrams and maps were in the book of what the canyon shape looked like over time, and also illustrations that showed the differences in plants, and also what the Grand Canyon used to look like versus what it looks like now. And also like the little sidebars with all the extra info about fossils and erosion and ecosystems and just getting in all the good information to young readers. So if I was to teach this book to a classroom, I think I would kind of do a activating background knowledge before the actual read, maybe by showing a map of the US and talk about how far away the Grand Canyon is from North Carolina, and kind of asking like, how do you think the land and landscape and topography and all that stuff would change, like on a road trip all the way from North Carolina to the Grand Canyon, and just showing them that distance about how far it really is from North Carolina. And then also maybe even for me, just like sharing personal photos and stories of like the things that I saw and the pictures that I have from the Grand Canyon, and seeing those real life examples of the plants, the animals. I remember even the squirrels look different out there, and the dirt color even changed from North Carolina to Arizona. And then maybe like have students brainstorm like what they think they might see when they hike to the Grand Canyon. So what might you see in the Grand Canyon from knowing these things? And then during reading, I would say supporting vocab, because there is a lot of new vocab for young readers about science and ecosystems and rock layers and all that kind of stuff. So kind of stopping along the way, like when the book describes rock layers, like talk about what that means and maybe show an example or pull out a fossil to see the different layers. And then kind of when the book switches from like past to present, talking about like how the canyon formed and stuff, maybe asking questions like, how does this part help us picture what the Grand Canyon used to look like? Or if it once was underwater, what kind of fossils do you think we'd find? Do you think we would find fish or other animals that might not be there today? And then I think it would be fun to like point out like the desert plants and animals and kind of compare them to North Carolina's plants and animals and be like, oh, there's a cactus in this one. Like, we don't have those here in North Carolina. Or kind of ask questions like, why do you think a cactus would do well in the desert and not a place with lots of rain? Just doing lots of comparison from something what they're familiar with to plants and animals like in North Carolina, and then doing something what they're learning about and might not be so familiar with like the ecosystems and stuff out in Arizona. I think by connecting this book to my own personal experience, it'd be a really cool way to like get the kids to really listen and pay attention and like want to know my story and also read the story that they're reading, and that this is a real place and these are real things and they are fun to explore and get out and go see, and how this shapes the environment around us and the world we see and all the things that are in an ecosystem.